Today we're going to discuss the question of, should Christians eat pork? We're going to talk about it. Let's get it. My name is Jermaine, and thank y'all for joining us on That Christian Fam. If growing in the faith is important to you, hit that subscribe button, because over here we like to encourage, empower, and give you everyday practical Christian advice on real life situations. We drop videos whenever we drop videos, so hit that notification bell, because for the first hour, we respond to comments immediately. All right, y'all, let's jump right into it. Should Christians eat pork? We're going to discuss 4 reasons why people choose not to eat pork. Reason number 1, pigs, hogs, or whatever you want to call them, they are downright filthy, and they will literally eat anything you feed them.
I've always heard that pigs will eat absolutely anything. Don't waste anything. Carcasses, fruit, old food, anything. Well, I saved the rabbit carcass from yesterday. Pretty much just the fur and the head and the guts. And I'm going to see. And let's see if these pigs will really eat the rabbit carcass.
Yeah, that's nasty. Reason number 2 as to why people do not eat pork is for religious views. Now, we know the very popular ones, which are Jews and Muslims. Now, the reason Jews don't eat pork is because of something called kosher, all right? And kosher, literally, the literal meaning for kosher is meaning clean or pure, which refers to food that has been prepared in accordance with Jewish rules and rituals, meaning they refuse to eat it. They live by the Torah, which is the Pentateuch, or the Jewish law, the Mosaic law. The first 5 books of the Bible is the Pentateuch, but they live by the Torah, all right? The Torah allows eating only animals that both chew their cud and have cloven hooves, and so that eliminates pork. As for Muslims, they abstain from eating the flesh of any carnivorous animals, which includes but is not limited to pigs, boars, hogs, or whatever, as they like to call it, swine. And that is a sin according to their God, Allah. The third reason why people might choose not to eat pork is that pork actually has parasite worms that you cannot kill.
You can actually see them, like the heads of them popping through. It's so gross. Look, you can see them starting to crawl their way out.
Wait, this one's moving. Oh, gross.
Noted that I would take the microscope and show people how you can't kill the trichina worm in pork by cooking it. Heat was not destroying the worm, and I would show them, the difference, and demonstrate how FDA was now using radiation to try to kill the worms in pork because cooking was not working.
Which leads me to reason number 4, which is health. It's no surprise at all that pork is rich in sodium and high in cholesterol, and these things can lead to complications with hypertension and clogging your arteries. So we can understand why there's a population of people on the planet who choose simply not to eat pork based off health reasons alone. Now that I've given you all that, let's see what the Word of God has to say. I ain't no journalist, but y'all know what's up. Let's flip over to Acts chapter 10, verses 9 through 16. This is the account of Peter's vision. It says, about noon the following day, as they were on their journey and approaching the city, Peter went up on the roof to pray. He became hungry and wanted something to eat, and while the meal was being prepared, he fell into a trance. He saw heaven opened and something like a large sheet being let down to the earth by its 4 corners.
It contained all kinds of 4-footed animals,
as well as reptiles and birds. Then a voice told him, "Get up, Peter. Kill and eat." "Surely not, Lord," Peter replied. "I have never eaten anything impure or unclean." The voice spoke to him a second time, "Do not call anything impure that God has made clean." This happened 3 times, and immediately the sheet was taken back to heaven. This was God saying to Peter, listen, I understand according to Mosaic law what y'all did not do, and what y'all did not do in the Old Testament according to Jewish custom. However, I am God, and I am communicating to you that I have called everything clean. Let's flip over to Mark chapter 7, verses 14 through 19. It says, again, Jesus called the crowd to him and said, listen to me, everyone, and understand this. Nothing outside a person can defile them by going into them. Rather, it is what comes out of a person that defiles them. After he had left the crowd and entered the house, his disciples asked him about this parable. Jesus said, are you so dull? He asked. Don't you see that nothing that enters a person from the outside can defile them? For it doesn't go into their heart, but into their stomach and then out of the body. In saying this, Jesus declared all foods clean. What was Jesus communicating? He just said that you have the freedom to eat anything, and it is not a sin in the eyes of God. And we're going to double back to that freedom here in a minute. But I want to point out a population of people who existed back when Jesus said this and still exist today. And these are the people who practice something called asceticism. What is asceticism? It is the practice of severe self-discipline and abstention from all forms of indulgence, typically for religious reasons. And the common area of life that people chose and still choose to practice this is, you guessed it, the area of food consumption. Those who practice asceticism believe that they can achieve a higher plane or a higher level of spirituality or get closer to God because they are denying themselves of any indulgence of any type of food or anything like that, and saying, hey, because I do this, I'm more spiritual. Because I do this, I am closer to God. Now you can see the friction and how this is problematic, because Jesus doesn't want any of us to boast. He doesn't want us looking at each other and saying, oh, it's because I did A, B, and C that I'm more spiritual than you. No, we are all what we are by the grace of God. Fasting in and of itself doesn't make you closer to God. It can be a tool. Let me explain. By fasting, what you're doing is you're practicing or strengthening your self-discipline, and self-discipline is one of the 9 graces of the fruit of the Spirit mentioned in Galatians chapter 5. All right, so that's one way that it's actually helping your spirit man, but also it's freeing up time for you, because the time that you would use to prep your meals, cook your meals, the time that you would use to eat, that is now time that you can block out and dedicate it to the things of God. But fasting in and of itself doesn't make you better than anybody. It doesn't make you more righteous than anybody. And to keep it a buck, our righteous is nothing more than a filthy rag, meaning a menstrual rag, which is just disgusting when you think about it. As believers in Jesus Christ, we should be known for what we believe in and what we do, as opposed to what we don't do, just so we can get brownie points in the eyes of men. In conclusion, as my wife loves to say, too much of anything can eventually be a bad thing. Even though it's quote unquote something that is deemed to be good, eventually too much of it can lead to problems. One thing we need to be careful of is not being too extreme one way or another. Let's look at Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 18. It says, it is good to grasp the one and not let go of the other. Whoever fears God will avoid all extremes. The Amplified version puts it like this, says, it is good that you take hold of one thing, righteousness, and also not let go of the other, wisdom. For the one who fears and worships God with all filled reverence will come forth with both. And what that is saying is this: don't be extreme in a certain area of life, all right? You need to have something called balance, all right? So for those of us who say, oh, well, I'm just gonna be 100% vegan or I'm just gonna eat steak and potatoes. No, be wise and be balanced, all right? Don't get too extreme. Now, that's not to say that we can't have seasons in life where we say, hey, listen, I'm going to eat just vegetables for this amount of time or whatever. But to make that a way of life for the rest of our life, we talking about maybe 40, 50, 60 years for some of us, all right? That is something that we might need to be careful of, all right? Because too much of anything or being too strict in one area, all right, can be problematic for us all. Back in the Bible days, especially in the Old Testament, those people who did not have farms, ranches, cattle, and things like that, they literally ate what they could grow and what they could catch, all right? And it wasn't every day that they had something that they grew that they could eat. And they weren't guaranteed to catch something every day. This is why they had to be careful not to be gluttonous and exercise wisdom when it came down to eat something they caught, because they weren't guaranteed to catch something every single day. So when you have to depend on eating what you grow from the ground or what you can literally catch, when you marry those two situations together, it creates or created the ideal diet or way of eating. Let's skip over to the New Testament. 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 12, Paul puts it like this. He says, I have the right to do anything you say. But then Paul comes back and says, yeah, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but I will not be mastered by anything. And this is where that freedom comes back that we talked about, because Paul is simply saying, look, I have the freedom to do what I want. However, just because I have the freedom to do it, it doesn't mean it's gonna, by doing it or exercising this so-called freedom, it does not mean that it's gonna be beneficial. And I have to be careful with this so-called freedom, because when we start going heavy into these freedoms, what happens is those things end up being a vice. And so it's no longer us having control over those things, but those things having control over us. And this is what Paul is simply warning us not to do. Don't be controlled by anything. That goes back to Galatians 5, that 9 graces of the fruit of the Spirit. One of the things is simply self-control. So to sum it all up, can Christians eat pork? Sure they can. Should Christians eat pork? Well, that's a personal choice. Just know that it is not a sin according to the word of God. And if you do choose to eat pork, please know what you're eating and exercise wisdom. Thanks for watching. I hope I helped somebody on the other side of this video. And for all the trolls or anybody else, if you're offended, I really don't care. If you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button, like this video, and share it with somebody if you can. This is Jermaine from That Christian Fam. That's a wrap.
They like the way that I rock, swallow my